TWSN Patreon page. Here we will provide you with the sports betting tips, picks, and information in order for you to become a successful gambler. We have 5 packages that I think really do an incredible job of providing the information tailored to you, what you want, and what your sports betting needs are. For more information, reach out to the TWSN team, but we have a ton of stuff coming your way. Content from fantasy football, sports betting for UFC, NBA, NHL, and of course, the NFL. We are so excited to be able to bring this service to you, and let us know if there's any more information you need.
Get up, let me begin. This is TWSN. You ain't heard about us yet, well you better know now because it's the place that it all goes down on.
Welcome back to this week's edition of the TWSN Show. As always, we have a pretty jam-packed show tonight. A lot of fun things to talk about. But before we get into things, just your weekly reminder to subscribe and follow along here on the YouTube channel, along with the social medias on the Instagram and Twitter as well. Subscribe to the TWSN Patreon. Now, we got the crew back together for the most part. It's been a while since we've seen you. Tom, how you been?
I'm good. Sorry for the short hiatus, but I'm back.
Good. Glad to have you. Like I said, we got a lot to talk about, so, let's kind of get into it. We usually start the shows off with the college football ranks. We didn't have them on an hour before the show this week. We had them at Sunday, I believe. And we got our college football playoffs set. Matt, you're kind of the college football guy here. What do you think about these ranks?
Are we just talking ranks? We just breaking into the games here. I mean, because the rankings at this point don't matter really, other than the top 4. The rankings don't really matter at that much.
Yeah.
We got our bowl games all set. We got some really good,
yeah.
Like New Year's Day games going on. But I'm excited for the playoff, man. We got some 2 really, really good matchups here. We got Cincinnati going up against Alabama. This is that chance Cincinnati wanted all year long. Last year, they were like, we want to be in the playoff. We deserve to be in the playoff. All right, well, now you're in the playoff. Let's see what happens. You're going up against the baddest team in college football over the last however many years. The question is, can they do it? I think that's it. I think they pose an interesting matchup against Alabama because of quarterback Desmond Ritter, and their defense is pretty solid. And what Bama team are we going to get? Are we going to get the Bama team that just blew out Georgia the other night? Or are we going to get the Bama team that almost lost to Florida, LSU, Auburn, Arkansas? I think that's what's going to come down to this matchup. So that's going to be a fun game. And then in the other game, it's just pure strength against strength, man. We got Georgia and Michigan, 2 great defenses going at it, 2 great running teams going at it. Kirby Smart, Jim Harbaugh. It's going to be a fun matchup. I think these are the 4 best teams in college. And it's gonna. I can't wait till New Year's Eve, honestly.
Tom, what do you think? Cody,
yeah, I'll go real quick. I think in the grand scheme of things, it was a good thing that Alabama won the SEC championship because, like Matt just said, this is the best group of 4. It's the best 4 teams in college football. I'd be lying to you if I told you I didn't want to see Michigan square off against Cincinnati because I think that would be a really good game, but I know it's virtually impossible because you don't want Georgia and Alabama matching up back to back. So it's a little tough, but I'm also really excited to see how Cincinnati comes out. They're 14-point dogs. They're not expected to even be in the game really. Like a lot of people expect it to be a blowout. So I'm really interested to see that, but I'm also kind of interested to see how Michigan, who's played really well these last 3 weeks, after pretty much dominating. I mean, obviously they dominated Iowa on Saturday, but they beat up on Ohio State as well, especially in that second half. So if they can continue their momentum and maybe take down Georgia, it's definitely a storyline, really storyline number 1 for me.
Got it.
I mean, honestly, one thing I want to point out about college football playoffs, it's 2 games to become the champion, and I think the most important things in this playoff is 1, coaching, and 2, the hottest team right now. I mean, what team is on a high? And I think that showed. I mean, Alabama came out and they're on a high after beating Georgia, the undefeated, overall team that's been dominant all year. So I think that Alabama comes in obviously with the most momentum. And second to them has got to be Michigan. I mean, Cincinnati's been doubted all year, but Michigan just lights out on defense and offense is starting to click. So I think those 2 really have the advantage here going into the playoffs. So I'm interested to see. But those are my 2 teams I'm excited to see.
Yeah. So, I mean, we just talked a little bit generically about those two. So now we're gonna go in a little bit more detail about them. And let's start with the versus 4, Alabama versus Cincinnati. Um, like Tom said, 14-point dogs right now. I don't know if I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised me either way if the line moves up or down. But just in general, right now, 14. Yeah, I don't know what to think. I think obviously a lot of people, it's 14 for a reason. People don't think it's gonna be that close. Not that 14 is a blowout. But I think there's a lot of things that UC has, that Alabama really hasn't faced this year. I mean, Desmond Ritter is the best quarterback they're gonna face all year. He's one of the best quarterbacks in the nation. I mean, I know they have Bryce Young too, but I think UC matches up better with Alabama than most people think. Like, we sat here on the show last week, and I don't know if I believe this, but like I said, I think if UC has a chance, they better play Alabama. I mean, I think they have a chance to beat Alabama. Like I said, I think they match up better than most people. And like, I think if you're UC, you're probably excited you got Alabama and kind of upset at the same time, because if you're going to beat anybody, and if you come in here and beat Alabama, everybody's going to love you. You're going to prove everybody wrong. So I think you're definitely excited about that chance. But there's obviously a lot to worry about with Alabama. But, Matt, how do you think this game's going to unfold?
So for me, for this game, I think the loss of John Mechie for Alabama is going to play a major factor in what happens, because he has been playing great all season long for Alabama. And yes, they still have weapons, and Alabama's always had that next man up mentality. But that is a loss that they are not going to be able to, duplicate. They still have Jameson Williams, and he's going to present some problems for this Cincinnati secondary with Gardner and Kobe Bryant. And we'll see, because this is definitely going to be probably the best receiver they've played, honestly. And absolutely. I honestly think Gardner's touchdown streak might be in jeopardy in this game. But kind of like what you mentioned, Logan, this game is more than just a game for Cincinnati. Yes, Cincinnati wants to win this game, obviously. Their fans want them to win the game, obviously. But this is the chance for a group of 5 team to show they belong in the college football playoff discussion. Because if Cincinnati goes out there on New Year's Eve and absolutely just gets blown off the field by Alabama, they are no group of 5 team is ever getting into the playoff ever again. This is the chance to show they belong. There's a lot riding on the shoulders of Cincinnati here. They need to make sure they don't get blown out. They need to keep this game close. And because if not now, when is a group of 5 team ever going to do that? Mm-hmm. It's just not going to happen. And the committee is never going to put one in again. I don't care what happens going forward. It's just not going to happen. So Cincinnati has a lot of pressure on them, to be honest. They faced massive pressure all year. I mean, they went into Notre Dame and won. Not a lot of people thought they could do that. Notre Dame, who is the number 5 team, that was a big win for them. No one thought they could beat SMU possibly. They beat SMU. No one thought they could beat Houston. They beat Houston. Cincinnati has proven all year long, when they're doubted, they win. I don't see them beating Alabama, but I do think this game is going to be closer than a lot of people think. I think they will keep it within the 10-point range. And I think that is probably a good scenario for Cincinnati if they aren't going to actually win the game. But I do think it's going to be a close game, at least until the last few minutes, when I think Alabama might pull away, just because Bryce Young is on a whole other level this season.
Yeah. Tom, you go, and then Cody.
Yeah, I think, what's most important in this game for Cincinnati is getting off to a really good start. When you're facing Alabama, there's no chance that you're going to make these late game comebacks in the second half, in the fourth quarter. It's just not going to happen. So you have to take that momentum that we talk about, that, they feel doubted. They really need to win this, not only for themselves, but, for every group of 5 team in college football. They really need to, come out and have a quick start. Whether it's an opening drive score, that's just a tad piece of momentum that, maybe could lift them, as more opportunities come. So I think what's definitely most important is, they just got to win the first quarter, right? And then you have a chance. So that's kind of how I look at it. Listen, I think Matt brings up a great point that we can't forget of John Mechie being hurt. Obviously that's a huge loss for this Alabama wide receiving core. So, they're a little banged up, but, it's just a cycling bin for them. They could
Yeah.
just slide in quickly. So I think. Listen, I'm not going to say that Cincinnati's going to win this game, but I'll agree that it will. I think it'll be within 2 scores. I hope that it's within 1, just for the sake of college football. But I think what's definitely most important is if the Bearcats get off to a good start in the first half, and that's going to be really important. If they want a chance in this one.
And I just, before we move on to Cody or you, Logan, I just want to respond to Lance. He said the number 1 seed has blown out the number 4 seed many times. That is true, but the difference is this is a group of 5 team, and the committee barely wanted to put this team in. They were a goal line stop by Baylor away from possibly putting Oklahoma State in over Cincinnati. You could argue that Oklahoma State would have got in over Cincinnati if Baylor doesn't stop them. And I'm not saying that Oklahoma State's a better team than Cincinnati, but Oklahoma State, if they had beaten Baylor, they would have beaten Baylor twice. They would have beaten Oklahoma. They had they play in a much better conference than Cincinnati. And I just think there's a lot of pressure riding on Cincinnati here. And they're going up against Nick Saban. And to Tom's point, they need to start off strong because I don't know. Notre Dame is also not in one of the Power 5 conferences. That's the difference too. Notre Dame, every time Notre Dame goes up against any of the Power 5 teams in a playoff or anything, they get blown out. Man. So credit to Cincinnati. I've been rooting for Cincinnati all year long to get into the playoff. I said if they go undefeated, they deserve to be in. But I'm a little concerned because Nick Saban is that coach where you give him weeks to prepare for you, it's tough. And we all remember what happened with Georgia in that championship game where he switched to Tua. Georgia was manhandling Alabama in that first half. And he switched to Tua, and look what happened. And it's going to be an interesting game. I do give Cincinnati a chance here. And I really hope for Cincinnati's – okay, Alabama is I wouldn't say the greatest college football team ever, this Alabama team. But it's just it still remains they're not a Power 5 team, and I think the committee wants to see something from this group of 5 team.
Yeah, and I think to the point of number 1 is always be number 4. Those were some Notre Dame teams that were undefeated, but weren't really that good. It was a Michigan State team that had Connor Cook, and they really had no offense. It was a Washington team that just got manhandled. So those were not great number 4 teams, and they were just dominant number 1s. I really could look at it as if the committee put whether it was Alabama, Michigan, or Georgia, I would understand why they're 1, right? It's every single one of those teams, like they're close, they're very close in range.
Especially Michigan.
Yeah, in years past, it was dominant number 1s against, weak 4s. Now it's a Cincinnati team that's undefeated and one of the best group of 5 teams we've ever seen, and going up against an Alabama team who, listen, they're obviously very, very good, but maybe not as dominant as years past. So I don't really know if I like the comparison of this 1-4 matchup, looking to previous ones.
Cody, your turn, fine.
It is completely different. I know, right? Matt just man. That guy.
We appreciate the comments, Lance. This isn't going at. We appreciate the comments and you coming at us with this.
It is different than all the other years. So a 1-4 matchup. I mean, Cincinnati is a very talented team, and I'm not taking anything away from them. But I think what Lance really meant was they are one of the best programs in college football history. And I have to agree with him. I mean, Nick Saban is fantastic, and like you said, you give him too much time to prepare for you, it's not going to go well for you most of the time. And I do think it's going to be a 10-point matchup here. Like, I think Alabama's definitely going to run away with it in the end because Cincinnati's going to let them hang around too long. It's going to be close. But the biggest thing here that it comes down to is inexperience. I mean, like you said, this matchup means so much to all those small schools out there that just want a chance in the playoff. And this is a different conversation. 4 is just not enough teams in the playoff. But Cincinnati has played great all year. I hope they really, really, really prove themselves. But I think the only way that they get the respect or any small teams respect the coming years is if they win it, sadly. I don't think it matters if it's close because it's going to be forgotten and come next year. So.
I can definitely, I mean, obviously a win would be awesome. And kind of going off that, giving you a more technical answer, I think, about some things that UC can do to win. And, Matt kind of brought it up a little bit earlier. He talked about, Ahmed Sauce Gardner going against Jamison Williams. And I think if I'm UC, it kind of sounds crazy, but like I don't even think I'm putting him across from him. I think I'm putting Kobe Bryant on him and doubling him with, safety help over top, and then putting Gardner on the other side of whoever they're going to step in and just try to, kind of try to kill two birds with one stone a little bit, by doubling Williams and having one of the best corners in the nation on whoever steps up. I think on defense, that's the strategy I would go with. Who knows what they will do? But I think that kind of gives them a little bit of, the upper hand. Ironically enough, I think that'd be kind of where I go defensively. And then offensively, I mean, everyone talks about the talent on UC, but Jerome Ford played at Alabama. We all know that Alabama running backs, leave and go succeed plenty of other places, go play in the NFL, and Jerome Ford is one of them. He is very good. And I know, revenge game or whatever, but he's a good running back. He played at Alabama too. He's going to be he's probably going to be the most important person on this UC offense because they're going to have to run the ball. Desmond Ritter is not going to be able to throw the ball so many times. I think they're going to need to kind of control the clock offensively, and that's going to be on the back of Jerome Ford. And I mean, I think if they win this game, Jerome Ford's going to have a huge game, and then, you're probably going to have to find a way to limit Jameson Williams. And I think that's by putting Kobe Bryant on him and putting a safety help over top and trying to double him. I don't know if that'll work. I don't know if that's what they're going to do. But personally, that's, kind of my thought process of things. But another thing about the college football playoffs that I really like, and I think you get it some years, but I think you can really argue that, these are probably 4 of the best coaches in college football this year as well. And that's really awesome. I mean, obviously Nick Saban and Luke Fickell just won Coach of the Year or whatever. That's awesome. And then, you got this other side of the game, Kirby Smart and Harbaugh. That's a pretty exciting game as well. I mean, Michigan and Georgia, I think if I was in the committee, I think I would put Michigan as the 1 seed. But like Tom said, they probably don't have Alabama and Georgia play again. We can kind of transition into that.
Can I just say one last thing about the Cincinnati game?
Yeah, go for it.
One last thing. Everything I've said, this is not to say since there's going to be talk over the next couple weeks that Cincinnati might just be happy to be here, and that's not the case. This Cincinnati team believes they can beat Alabama, and all I'm going to say is if they somehow do it, the college football world is going to be sent into madness. Straight up madness. Alabama. If a group of 5 team knocks Alabama, the defending champions, out of the playoff in the first round. That's all I will say. Yeah. It's going to be a great game, and I can't wait.
Yeah, another thing too, we talked about all the pressure, UC has on them to, kind of, represent all the other teams, the group of 5s, all the lower schools. But UC's had pressure on them all year. They knew they had to be perfect all year long. And I know it's not necessarily the same as Alabama being experienced or whatever, but UC's been in tough situations before, very different than the situation they're about to go into. But they're no stranger to adversity. So even though it's a little bit different, I think they got a lot to play for. So I think it'll even out for the most part. Like I said, we can kind of move on. Let's go the opposite direction. Let's start with you, Cody. Georgia and Michigan.
Georgia and Michigan is going to be the best game out of the 2, in my opinion. I think it's going to be a back and forth game, back and forth as in defensively, not offensively. I am very impressed with. I was a Michigan hater. Obviously, as from Ohio, that's something with that, but. I was a Michigan hater because I didn't truly think they were what they were. But in that Big Ten game, it was hard for me to deny anything that they showed out there on a big stage against Iowa. So I respect that. I truly think Georgia's in some huge trouble here because, like I said at the beginning of the show, if you're hot right now, that's huge for the playoffs because it's 2 games. It's 2 games, and any team can beat any team at any time in the season. I think this is a huge, huge test here for this Georgia team that everybody wanted to talk about as one of the best teams even ever in college football, and a team that we talked about as Alabama, who struggled with some smaller teams, came out and kind of handled them this past week. So I think they're on a down right now. I don't know what's going on, but I think the team that they did not want to play was Michigan, and I think Michigan has a huge shot here with their offense finally clicking. The only thing that's not on their side is inexperience in the playoffs and inexperience in this kind of stage. It is a different stage than the Big Ten championship, so we'll have to see what Harbaugh pulls out.
Yeah, honestly, I'm kind of going off what you said, Cody. While Michigan beat Ohio State, I was impressed with that performance completely. I was a little worried. I'm not going to lie. I was a little worried that they might lose to Iowa because what we've seen over the course of his tenure at Michigan is Jim Harbaugh typically loses the big game. And think about it. You have all this momentum you're finally beating Ohio State, and now you're playing an Iowa team who a lot of people are like, oh, Iowa has no chance to beat Michigan. I was like, you know what? Watch them lose. I didn't think I picked Michigan to win the game, but watch them lose. This would be the most Michigan thing to happen, basically. They impressed me. I mean, they blew Iowa off the field that night.
Yeah.
And I think that was their statement being like, this is not the same Michigan team that we have seen. And I'm in complete agreement with you, Cody. I think Georgia is on upset alert, if you even want to call it an upset, since Michigan is technically ranked, higher. But yeah, it's weird because all year long, Georgia had that like magical season feeling, like this is their year. They're finally going to break through. And then within a span of like basically like a week or two, it's Michigan now. Yeah. Michigan feels like the team of destiny to me at this point. Yeah. I mean, they beat Ohio State finally. They barely lost to a Michigan State team. Like, honestly, they are a blown lead in the fourth quarter to the Spartans away from having an undefeated season. This Michigan team is pretty good, and they have a really good defense who's going to make life miserable for whoever Kirby Smart puts at quarterback, basically. Whether it's Bennett, whether it's JT Daniels, this Michigan defensive front is going to come to play. We know that. I mean, Aiden Hutchinson has been incredible this season, and I think Georgia's, like I said, on upset alert. Now, I'm not going to sit here. I don't know exactly who I'm picking to win the game. There's still time for that. We're weeks away here. But I will say, in the beginning of the preseason on our TWSN Tailgate show, I said that Alabama and Georgia would meet in the championship game, the SEC title game. Alabama would beat Georgia to get into the playoff, but then Georgia would beat Alabama in the championship rematch. I kind of want to stick with that. I did. I have footage. Go back and look, Logan. Go back and look, sir. But it's kind of crazy because that could happen. I think if they were to meet up again, I don't think we're going to see the same thing that happened on this past Saturday. Georgia's not going to let that happen again. I'm not going to say Georgia's going to beat them, but they're not going to get embarrassed again. But yeah, this Michigan-Georgia game is going to be great. Strength against strength. For sure. And it's going to be such a fun watch. I do agree with you, Cody. It's going to be a defensive game, like 20 points and under, basically, for both teams. Like a 20-17 or 17-14 type of game. And it's just going to be a dogfight the entire way.
That's it. Tom?
Well, I'll start with Michigan, and I will admit, I grew up an Iowa Hawkeye fan, and I've been an Iowa fan my entire life. And I really knew that, the Hawkeyes had no chance, but the one thing that I thought that would maybe help out Iowa a little bit is their pure dominant defense. They haven't let up 28 points in more than 2 years. And Michigan completely impressed me as they just dominated, especially on the run game. Hassan Haskins was very good, but they really were so versatile in their offensive strategy, and they dominated Iowa. They put up 42 points. And, we mentioned momentum in the beginning. And I really think that Michigan, this momentum of beating up on Iowa, beating Ohio State before, that they might have a chance to really, have a good shot against Georgia. Listen, Georgia's obviously very good. 2 weeks ago, I think it was Cody who said it, we could talk about how they were one of the best teams, maybe even ever, right? Because they were so dominant. I'm really excited to see this matchup. Sometimes in college football playoff semifinals, we don't see great games, right? We talked about the 1-4 dominance. Every once in a while, we might get a little lucky with a 2-3, but we really don't get that as often as we like. And I really think that we might be really lucky, as I'm going to knock on wood here, that both these games are going to be really close, especially this 2-3 matchup between Michigan and Georgia. So I know it's a very bland answer, but I really like Michigan in this one.
Yeah, I think this game's a little weird. I think it's going to be fun just because I think they are very similar teams. Mm-hmm. But when I kind of look at college football, the thing I always kind of go to like kind of who I lean to or kind of who I'd like favor is quarterback play. And neither of these quarterbacks excite me. Mm-hmm. Like neither of them are terrible. Neither of them are that good. So I think that's just another element of why this game is so tough to get a read on. They both just want to run the football and play defense. And it's hard to get excited about a game with, in my opinion, it's hard to get excited about a game where I'm not excited to watch either quarterback play. that doesn't mean they're not going to play good. That doesn't mean Stinson Bennett is going to come out here and throw 5 touchdowns, because he might. But, so just in general, it's going to be more of an old school, I think, kind of style of game like we talked about. I think that's kind of what everybody expects. They want to run the football. They're going to play defense. Both of them have amazing defenses headlined by some great people. But, yeah, I think I'm more excited for the UC Alabama game for the quarterback play. But this Michigan Georgia game is 2 very similar teams. And I personally think probably whoever wins this game will probably win the national championship. I think, if I had to guess.
I agree with that. I agree with
It's
that.
the Georgia-Michigan game?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll see.
I think so.
I think it just depends.
Well, obviously it depends, Matt.
I don't know, man. Alabama, it's hard to count out Alabama.
Before we move on, everybody's college football winner. Start with you, Matt.
Like the champion?
Yeah, everything. Championship.
All right, I'm taking Bama to beat Cincinnati. I'm going to take Georgia to beat Michigan, and I'm going to stick with my prediction originally. Georgia beating Bama in the title game.
Tom?
I also think Alabama beats Cincinnati. I'm going to go different. I think Michigan beats Georgia, and I'll go completely off the cuff and say I think Michigan does it. I think Michigan will be the champion.
Cody?
You're not completely off. I'm going to go with Michigan beating Georgia. I'm going to go with Alabama beating Cincinnati. And I think that at that point, Michigan's too far gone. Michigan's going to win it all.
I thought I was going to be the only one to pick Michigan. I guess not.
Part of me, like, I think Michigan has all the momentum in the world right now. But it's so hard to bet against Alabama. But the reason it's hard, like, for me to even pick Alabama right now is because John Mechie is so important to that team. But, like I said, I think at the end of the day, quarterback play is always, probably the biggest way you can have an advantage in a game. And Bryce Young is probably the best offensive player in college football right now. So I think right now, if I had to pick, I'd pick Alabama, just based off of quarterback solely. But I think after watching the games, I'd probably switch my answer to whoever wins the Michigan-Georgia game. So I'll go Alabama, Michigan in the finals. Alabama winning right now. But in 2 weeks, I'll probably have Michigan winning.
Let me just say one thing before we transition off of the playoff here. All 4 teams in the playoff rank in the top 20 in scoring defense. So this is going to be a very interesting playoff. We're used to high-flying offenses in the playoff in years past. This is going to be a very defensive playoff, I believe. Alabama's probably the most explosive team left, but the loss of Mechie is going to be very, very interesting to see how they recover from that.
I agree. We just talked about Bryce Young. We just talked about these defenses. Some of those guys, some of these teams are headlined by some of these Heisman finalists. Bryce Young, Heisman finalist, Aiden Hutchinson, Heisman finalist. And the other 2, C.J. Stroud and Kenny Pickett. Those are your 4 Heisman finalists. I think this is a very, very, very interesting group of 4. By the way, I don't necessarily agree with the list, but at the end of the day, this is the 4 we got, and we can't do nothing about it now. So we'll start with Tom. How do you feel about this Heisman list right now?
Well, I thought Young is obviously a shoo-in. I understand Kenny Pickett. I'm not a Kenny Pickett fan whatsoever. I mean, it really benefits him that he's been there for 12 years. But I'm just not a fan of his. But he also should have been in. I get the CJ Stroud, so I won't even talk about that. It's obviously just Hutchinson, should have been there. He really dominated those last 2 weeks, which is probably what put him over the edge. Obviously, you can have the Will Anderson, Aiden Hutchinson debate all night. Will Anderson, who dominated Alabama, had more total tackles, more tackles for a loss, and had more sacks than Hutchinson. So you can kind of compare those two and say, hey, well, look at these numbers. So, it was Hutchinson who stepped up in the big game, I guess, obviously against Ohio State, and then played pretty well in the Big Ten Championship as well. Another guy who, maybe I'm just saying this because he was my preseason guy, I'm going to say it anyway. I thought Matt Corral probably should have got a little bit more of, maybe he should have been one of those Final 4. I think no one, this might be a little bit bold, but I'm going to say it. I think no one meant more to his team this year than Matt Corral did for Ole Miss. I mean, they were the 8th team in the country, and if you take them off that roster, they're nowhere near top 40, So, and I know a lot of people had high expectations for him this year. For some people, maybe he didn't reach those, but for others, kind of exactly what they expected. I thought that he should have been the fourth. I personally just like to see 4 quarterbacks, for Heisman. So I've always been one of those guys. But I would like to see Corral, but I like Hutchinson. He stepped up the last 3 weeks, really, for Michigan. So I understand all of them.
I don't.
Matt, what about you?
No, well, Cody, you can go first.
All right, thanks. I was just going to say that I don't think I've ever been more disappointed in the committee with some of the recency bias that comes with putting Aiden Hutchinson in. I love Aiden Hutchinson. He's obviously super dominant, and he has been, especially toward the end of the year this year, and deserves all the respect in the world to be talked about as one of the best players in college football. But I think the disrespect toward a certain player that you didn't bring up, Tom, is Kenneth Walker, and the fact that I don't understand. Like you said about Ole Miss, I think that Kenneth Walker was the most impressive or the most important player in the country for that certain team. So I think Michigan State without Kenneth Walker probably wins around 6 games. And I truly do believe that, because an injured Michigan State absolutely got pummeled by Ohio State. So I just think that's the thing that I noticed most. And it is, as we saw here on the screen, it is one of the weakest Heisman finalists I think we've seen in a while. But I think it's still fair to put these 3 quarterbacks in. Kenny Pickett, I am not the biggest fan going into the NFL, but he deserves to be in here and have the respect that he has, even though he's been around for a while. And CJ Stroud and Bryce Young were just top 2 quarterbacks in college football this year. So,
Matt?
Yeah, I mean, I will agree. Corral and Walker definitely, probably deserved a shot here. It's just cool. I think it's cool that a defensive player is even being considered. I mean, Hutchinson's not going to win. I don't even think he's the best defensive player in the country, if we're being honest. I think he's incredible, but I think Kayvon Thibodeau at Oregon is the best defensive player in the country. His team just wasn't as good as Michigan, obviously. But a Bryce Young is going to win the award. Like that's as simple
100%.
as that. Bryce Young is going to win the award. 100%. But what about Desmond Ritter? How did he not get even considered here? Because 12-0,
more deserving than Kenny Pickett.
Yeah, well, but that's the thing. Like, how did Ritter not get considered? Like, he led his team to an undefeated season. He threw for over 3,000 yards, 30 touchdowns, completed more than 65% of his passes. I thought Ritter should have at least gotten a shot. He wasn't going to win, but if he had just been a finalist, I would have put him in over Hutchinson probably. Yeah, Hutchinson had a great year, but Ritter led his team to a perfect season thus far, and now they're in the playoff. I would have loved to see Ritter get some recognition there, but it is what it is. Bryce Young's going to win the award. He has been incredible this season. I have not seen an Alabama quarterback like this in a long time. The dude was originally he committed to USC. He decommitted and went to Alabama. I believe he went to Mater Dei in California for high school, and that school just continuously just pumps out talent every year. So I'm not surprised by it at all. CJ Stroud, I think he was leading the Heisman race until that Michigan game. You just can't play like that and expect to win. But Bryce Young is easily going to be the choice, and good for him. He had an incredible season, and his team is in a position to win a national championship because of him, basically.
I'm going to kind of combine some takes that Matt said and Tom said. Tom talked about it a little bit with Will Anderson and Aiden Hutchinson. Matt, you talked about Aiden Hutchinson not even being the best defensive prospect. You brought up Kayvon Thibodeau. I don't know how Will Anderson Jr. is not on this list if Aiden Hutchinson is. There's just no logical explanation. There's no logical explanation for it. Tom brought it up a little bit, but Aiden Hutchinson had 58 total tackles. Will Anderson Jr. had 91. Aiden Hutchinson had 15.5 tackles for loss. Will Anderson had 31.5. That's a record, by the way. Aiden Hutchinson had 14 sacks. Will Anderson had 15.5 sacks. I just don't understand how you can put Aiden Hutchinson in over Will Anderson Jr. in I don't understand how there's even an argument.
I don't know
at all.
Recency bias,
Like,
kind of like what we talked about. That's my guess.
I just don't. I don't even get it. Like, I guess the recency bias is an okay answer, but like, Will Anderson Jr. is just flat out better in every statistical category ever. He's one of the best defensive draft prospects we've ever seen. He's a sophomore. Like,
also, enough with this
blows my mind.
first overall pick thing for Hutchinson. Like, he's not going to go over number one. I mean, I can't guarantee that. Obviously, I don't think he's going to.
Will Anderson Jr. would go first overall if he was eligible.
Okay, I'm not going to disagree with that. I think Kayvon's going to end up being the first overall pick, unless it's a quarterback.
He should be.
Really see a quarterback being taken first overall. But Hutchinson would be an incredible story. You know, going probably to the Lions, I assume. You know, Michigan to
That's
Detroit.
What I was
that'd
say,
be
depending
cool.
on who has it, maybe.
Yeah, I mean that would be a cool story. But yeah, I agree. It's kind of a weak Heisman class. I don't think they picked the correct people. I would have liked to see Ritter, as I said. Anderson would have been a great choice. But yeah, Bryce Young is he's easily gonna get the award.
Logan.
Yeah. I think the only person who could beat Bryce Young is Will Anderson Jr. I think he's the only person who has a semi-logical explanation, and he's not even a finalist.
I agree with that.
Logan, I have to question your Ritter deserves it more than Pickett. I have to question it. I need an explanation.
I mean, like Matt said, he went undefeated. He's in the college football playoffs. The numbers aren't that different in any way, shape, or form. And his team went undefeated. Like they're in a pretty similar situation. Like the talent levels on their team are probably pretty similar. Now Pittsburgh's no powerhouse either. I mean, obviously they're in a better conference, but like the talent levels on their team is probably fairly similar. But just in general, one went undefeated, one didn't. The stats are pretty similar. One's in the playoffs, one's not. I mean,
it's not knocking Kenny Pickett. He had an incredible year. And
Pittsburgh
was a very good team, and congrats on them for winning the ACC. And this is not a knock against Pickett at all. I mean, I don't necessarily think he's going to be the greatest quarterback in the NFL, but like for college, he was incredible for Pittsburgh.
Yeah,
I think
they're pretty similar players, and if like you're going to reward one for being on Pittsburgh and having similar stats to Desmond Ritter, you should probably give the person to the one who's in the college football playoffs and is undefeated.
I just questioned it because their stats aren't too similar, only because Pickett's thrown 12 more touchdowns and thrown for 1,200 more yards, and if they have similar teams,
Ritter runs the ball more. I don't know.
I mean, Pitt also lost to Western Michigan. You can't.
Yeah.
I don't know. You can't lose to Western Michigan and still be in the Heisman race. I know, but still though, like when you're looking at Heisman, otherwise CJ Stroud might be in this. Like have a realistic shot at winning something. It's just you can't. You have to look at team performance as well, not just the play of the individual, because it does factor into some aspect of it, even if it shouldn't. It does.
Do we think the whole group of five thing comes into play for the Heisman voting?
I think it does a little bit, yeah. There is definitely a bias towards Power 5.
There definitely is, because I don't know why I just said that, because there definitely is, because I mean Western Kentucky's quarterback, by the way, I don't know if you know, Bailey Zappi, is literally about to break Joe Burrow's crazy records, so he's probably deserves a mention here as well.
Thank you for mentioning.
Yeah,
Zappi.
so. Yeah, that dude is. Yeah, I mean, nobody thought Joe Burrow's records would ever be broken. I know it's a Western Kentucky team, but like that's impressive too. So I guess it definitely does have an impact. Just probably why.
Yeah, but I mean, it's still going to be. We're also going to watch the ceremony, acting like we don't know who's going to win, and then we're all going to be like, "Oh, Bryce Young, congrats!"
I think that's the thing too. There's an really obvious kind of winner, and everybody else is kind of just there.
Exactly, but hey, good for them. I mean, that's still an incredible accomplishment.
Yeah, I'd be honored. Yeah. Absolutely. I don't know. Will Anderson Jr. will probably be there next year, so it's whatever. Moving on a little bit. We talked about the draft a little bit. We can transition into the NFL now again. We always kind of talk about the playoff races every week. Things are still hectic. Things are still crazy. Teams are 500 in the playoffs. Whatever. It's crazy, as always. I'm going to go through and read off the seeding real quick for both conferences just in the playoffs. So the top 7 seeds, both sides. We'll start the AFC. You got the Patriots leading the way, Titans in second, Ravens in third, Chiefs in fourth, Chargers in fifth, Bengals in sixth, and the Bills currently hold the last wild card. And then the NFC, got the Cardinals leading the way at 10-2, Packers in second, Tampa Bay Buccaneers in third, Cowboys in fourth, Rams in fifth, Washington 6th, and the San Francisco 49ers holding on the last wild card at 6-6. We kind of keep talking about how all of the teams kind of play each other. They're going to things are going to unfold week by week. Obviously, that's how the sport works. The Bengals and Chargers played, the Bills and Patriots played, Chiefs Broncos played. There's been a lot of interdivisional matchups, and it kind of caused some shift in their rankings a little bit. So we'll start with Cody. What were some of your biggest playoff projection takeaways from this week?
For the AFC or NFC are we starting with?
You decide where we go, Cody.
Yeah,
Okay.
Cody, you lead the way here.
I'll decide that we'll start with the AFC only because it's probably been the most interesting to talk about for us so far. So let's just get started off hot. I think the biggest surprise, I think we can talk about those surprises out of the season. Obviously, it's going to be the Titans, even though I don't think it's going to necessarily stand where they are at the 2 seed. But I think number one now, when we think about it, is the Patriots and how dominant they have been and how well Mac Jones, and I feel like he deserves the most amount of respect out of anybody in the NFL right now, just for not panicking and not trying to do too much, especially only throwing the ball 3 times this past game, which is insane. And I think
a lot of credit.
Yeah, a lot of credit. But I just think it's pretty crazy. But obviously, those are not as exciting as the wild card spots, and the Chargers handled the Bengals in a wild game with a lot of turnovers and back and forths and comebacks. And, the score didn't show how close the game probably was toward the end. But I think that both teams showed a lot out of each other. I think there was a lot of pressure on both sides, and it showed. But at the end of the day, I think the team that prospered was the Chargers, and they did show out. Herbert, showed out like you thought he would. But it's definitely an interesting time in the AFC, and the Bills are scaring me. I know that game was crazy. I know it was. I'm not going to judge it too hard. But there's a lot of AFC teams close, and if the Bills don't pull out, it get really messy. And everybody thought the Bills were Super Bowl. They're the Super Bowl team in the AFC. Now you're thinking,
yeah. I mean, you're.
No, I was saying, are we sure? That's the question I bring up.
Yeah, we kind of talked about it a couple weeks ago, actually. But I think me and Matt talked about it mainly. They haven't beat anybody good in a while.
They beat the Chiefs.
Like Josh Allen hasn't been able to beat good teams. I know it's a shorter career, but he just hasn't been able to do it. So I'm kind of with you with the Bills' concern.
Yeah,
I think they probably still sneak in just because I think they get in the playoffs. I mean, they're 7-5. I mean, I don't know. The Colts are right there. I guess the Steelers are right there. I don't really.
Well, the Bills are 7-5. They got the Bucs this week. And after that, it's Panthers. Then you got New England again. Then Atlanta and Jets to finish the year. So
they should be all right.
Fine. Yeah.
Yeah, they should be all right.
I'll segue that right into that. The Bills are actually like my biggest surprise in a not so good way. Again, I'm not going to put too much stock into last night, of course. But I'll openly admit they were the team out of the AFC for me. They were the team that I thought was for sure going to, make it to the Super Bowl. I thought they were going to be dominant on both sides of the ball, and they just have not. They've had so many question marks. And again, I'm not going to take too much stock out of last night. And they played well on Thanksgiving, but even right before that, they had that brutal loss to the Colts. Of course, that Jaguars game was a few weeks before, where they've had their highs and then they've had their really low lows too. My biggest surprise in the AFC is like the Bills, but not in a good way.
Yeah, Matt.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just to piggyback off of that. I mean, I said it in the beginning of the year. This Bills team just doesn't look right. Like, their offensive line just has not held up. Josh Allen makes bad decisions. Like you said, Tom, I'm not taking stock in last night. Like, the Patriots threw the ball 3 times and won the game. Like, you can't really look at that game and really take much away other than the Patriots, won in Buffalo and they have the edge here. But I'm kind of looking at the Chiefs. Like, yes, the Chiefs didn't look great against the Broncos, but I mean, this team's what are they now? 8-4? They're on a win streak. do you really want to? I don't want to play the Chiefs in the playoffs if I'm a team. Like you just because you at any moment Mahomes could just go off, and we kind of all wrote this team off except for Cody. Credit to you, Cody. Back weeks ago, and they're right in the middle of it. And I think the Chiefs could end up winning the AFC, the number 1 seed at this point. I mean, the Patriots still have to play Indianapolis in a couple weeks, and then they have to go. Then they have Buffalo again, but this Chiefs team is coming back a little bit. Offensively, they're still struggling a little bit, but I mean, their defense has been playing really well as of late, and that's not something I thought we were going to be talking about just 3 weeks ago.
I agree. I think that in the AFC, the biggest things when you look at the ranks to me right now are the Titans and the Ravens. Well, I don't think either of these teams are very good right now. The Titans clearly aren't the same without Derrick Henry. The Ravens have been spiraling. They just lost Marlon Humphrey. So I don't think they're gonna finish. I don't even know if either team is gonna end up winning their division at this rate. I guess the Titans probably will because they have the head-to-head over the Colts. But it wouldn't surprise me if they didn't. And then the Ravens have, they got to play. They still have to play the Browns. They have to play the Browns, Steelers, Bengals, Packers, Rams.
Yeah. The Ravens could realistically
lose out. Yeah, and I don't think it would be that much of a shock to anybody, especially with losing Marlon Humphrey. So I mean, that division's up for grabs. The AFC is pretty crazy. And you look at the Patriots at the 1 seed, and it's just I guess they're the best team in the AFC. It just doesn't feel right, but I guess. So it's just kind of a weird feeling all the way around. And I think the thing that I'm going to watch for me is the Titans and the Ravens and how their downward spiral or their issues being fixed is going to affect the playoffs. Because like I said, I mean, the Bengals are right behind them, Steelers, Browns, they could win the division, jump up to the 3-4 seed. Those two teams hold a lot of stake in how this AFC is going to really shape out.
Well,
Anybody else have any thoughts on the AFC?
Yeah, the Steelers. I think they saved their season the other day. Yeah. I mean, I don't necessarily know if that was the Steelers saving it or if the Ravens just kind of handed them the game. But I understand the Ravens had some injuries in the cornerback position. But in a game like that, of that big of magnitude, I'm just curious, what did you guys think about the decision for them to go for 2 to try to win the game?
I liked it. I said it immediately.
I thought it was risky because you're basically you're playing in this such a close race in not only the division but the AFC. I would have kicked the extra point, and made the Steelers come beat me. Make them beat me because Roethlisberger, while he was on a little roll there, has he shown anything this season to make you believe he could do it again?
Yeah, I mean their reasoning was the whole Marlon Humphrey thing. Which is fair, but you still got the coin toss too. What if you win the toss? Just go down.
Exactly. You got to
lose it, though, then you don't have to touch the ball again.
Yeah, I'm aware.
But your defense has been shutting the Steelers down for the most part throughout the game. I mean, there was just 1 or 2 plays where Deontay Johnson
healthy corners, right?
Yeah, but that's the whole point of having backups. I'm not saying that. I don't know. I thought it was a completely risky move by the Ravens, and I think it could end up coming back to hurt them come the end of the year because they could easily had a 9th win right now, and instead they have 8, and everyone's right behind them, and they have a tough schedule as we mentioned.
They do have a tough schedule, but I mean, I don't. The decision kind of still pretty much worked. Mark Andrews was wide open. They just didn't score. I don't know.
I still didn't like the play call. I feel like in that situation, I said in the moment, there's no way you don't load one side and let Lamar Jackson just take it in. I thought that was the only option there to put it in his hands and not in the hands of a throw. But like you said, he was open. It was just at his fingertips. But I just want to real quick on the AFC and talk about the Steelers. I think that I'm terrified at the fact that they have a chance to not only make the playoffs but win this division because of how tough the Ravens schedule continues to be and how tough it's been for them to even continue to play well. I mean, they've just not looked very good as a team right now. And the Steelers, just say what you want about the Steelers, guys. They've been bad. Ben's been bad. I mean, they're just not a very attractive team to look at. But they will find a way to win. It's Mike Tomlin's, Ben Roethlisberger.
Never say die.
They will find a way to win. And I guarantee you that as a Bengals fan for my entire life, they will find a way to make it to the top. And I think that's a true possibility with the way the division looks right now. So I just want to bring that up.
I will say the Steelers do have a tough schedule to end the year. So all the AFC North teams do, but I think the Bengals and the Browns might have the easier of the four.
Yeah,
I guess if you want to say that they're easier, because the Steelers still have to play the Chiefs in Arrowhead. They have the Vikings this week. They got the Titans next. The Titans in Pittsburgh. You never know which Titans team's going to actually show up. And then they finish the year in Baltimore, which, that's not an easy place to play, especially if Baltimore's still trying to win something. They're going to obviously want to knock the Steelers out. And the Steelers get the Browns and the Ravens to end the season. Those are two teams that very much dislike the Steelers and would love to just feast on their demise. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens.
It definitely will. Yeah, we can kind of transition to the NFC a little bit. I think realistically, the only thing worth talking about in the NFC is just the last two wild cards. That's the only thing that's really up for grabs. I know it's not like, the most fun talking about 500 football teams, but, Tom's Cowboys are going to win the division. The Cardinals are going to make the playoffs. Packers are making the playoffs. The Rams are making the playoffs.
Are the Cowboys going to win the division?
Yes.
I think they still will, but the Washington's right behind them.
Well, listen, it really all depends on what the 2 out of the next 3 weeks they play each other twice. So, the first one's big. It's in Washington too, so that's obviously Washington's advantage. So really, we'll have better understanding very soon. But I think Dallas still pulls out.
Yeah, they just got to win one of them and then win the division.
Washington's right on their tail right now.
They are, and
Washington's playing good, and
they
are playing very well. Like we said, they're the 6th seed right now. They're 6-6, or 6th seed. They're kind of figuring things out a little bit. It sucks that Logan Thomas just got hurt again for them. Yeah, I think they were getting healthier. Logan Thomas came back, Curtis Samuel came back. They were kind of just getting more used to playing with the people they have. Now Logan Thomas is going to be out again. Chase Young's obviously out for the year. But they're hot. We talked about all the momentum in college football. It's a thing in the NFL too. It's a thing in life. It's part of life. And I think Washington has a lot of it right now. 5 wins in a row, 4 wins in a row, and they're hot. As simple as that. But the teams under them, obviously the 49ers are the 7th seed, holding down the last wild card, and then you have the Eagles, the Vikings, Panthers, I guess the Falcons. Everybody in the NFC is not eliminated from the playoffs yet, technically. But so pretty much, I guess the Vikings and the Eagles, I guess, are the other two that I guess people assume to be kind of fighting.
Vikings kind of blew it on Sunday.
Yeah.
That was a chance to get another win and then be in it. Now I just don't see him as in it anymore. And I like.
So is there any team you guys think has a chance to overtake Washington or San Fran?
I think the Eagles, because they do get a chance to play Washington. This Eagles team has been kind of up and down. But when they've been up, they've been really good. And I'm not counting out the Eagles just yet. I think for the Vikings, this game against the Steelers in 2 days, that is a must win. If they lose to the Steelers, their season's done. 5-8, you're not coming back from 5-8. But if you can somehow find a way to get a win at home against the Steelers, I think the Vikings still have a decent chance to make the playoffs. Washington's one of those teams where it could just go very badly very quickly.
Very.
They play the Cowboys twice. They play the Eagles twice. But Washington is not a guarantee. I think the Niners are probably the safest team in that little race there, just because I think they finally found their footing, and I think they're going to get Deebo Samuel back either this week or next week. Yeah. So I have most confidence in the Niners out of all those teams to secure a spot, and then the last spot's going to be up for grabs, basically.
Yeah, the last spot's going to be interesting. Like we said, the Eagles are whatever. everybody here is just kind of mediocre. The Eagles, Vikings, Panthers, Falcons.
Cody's Atlanta Falcons.
Saints.
Listen, I think the 49ers stick, but I really don't think Washington sticks with their remaining schedule. It's just it's everything's against them going forward, and I just don't think they have what it takes. And I know this is probably going to come bite me back, and some Washington football fans going to turn me into an edit on YouTube, but I truly think that it's the Eagles or the Falcons to really take it for the grabs. I know I just said the Falcons, but their remaining schedule will be the Panthers this coming week, and then they got the 49ers, then they got the Lions, Bills, and Saints. I think that 3 of those are very winnable games for this team, and they can surprise us. They've done it a couple times this year. So I think I've become a bigger Falcons fan than Matt recently. So.
Yeah, I don't know, man. It's not very I don't know.
One of these teams is going to win a playoff game.
They're not good. They're not good. They're not good.
But they're going to win a
So it's
playoff
just
game.
like-
Just watch. It's going to happen. It happens every time.
Hey, I
one of
mean,
these teams
Washington
gets in.
almost won last year. That was an awesome game.
They did.
So you never know what's gonna happen. You just got some teams just need to get in. And they'll make something.
Lions to
happen.
the playoffs. Let's make it happen.
Yes, Dan Campbell, come back.
I like
Yeah, eat some kneecaps.
God. I mean, so what? There's no love for the Seattle Seahawks coming back, man.
Absolutely not.
They need to.
I
They
don't know
need
what
to
their
show some
schedule is,
consistency.
but
I don't care what their
I
schedule
don't know what
is.
their schedule
They
is.
play the Lions the next 5 times. I don't.
Yeah,
I mean, and as bad
If
as they
put
played,
Lions
the
in, like,
Saints are
5
still
times,
alive.
I think
Like,
they get in.
I
the
don't.
Saints have lost 5 in a row, but the Saints are still alive. They're only like a game and a half out. Like if the Saints go on a little run here, maybe the Saints do something. But
Yeah, the Saints are an interesting team because I mean you're gonna get Kamara back. Taysom Hill isn't like a quarterback really, but he can kind of win games. You know, they can kind of play that old school style of football. The Saints are definitely an interesting team. I think they deserve to be talked about. They play the Jets this week, so that's good for you if you think the Jets. I mean, if you think the Saints will win, it's good for the Saints. You have to feel good about it. Whether you're gonna win, like you think you're gonna win and lose, like it's a very winnable football game. So that's
yeah, the Saints
are
have the
definitely,
Jets.
definitely
The Jets this week, Buccaneers the next week, Dolphins, Panthers, and Falcons. So there's a couple winnable games
Yeah,
there. I mean, they beat
that's
the
pretty-
Bucks already. So, I mean, they beat the Bucks.
You got to
what,
feel pretty good about that.
3 straight times in the regular season, going back to last year.
Yeah, you got to feel pretty good about that if you're the Saints. I feel like. Right? I mean, I don't know, man. All these
I just
teams
don't know what
aren't
to
very
tell.
good.
Like all these, Well, I think that's the issue with this entire NFL season. Is one week this team looks incredible, the next week they drop to the Lions or someone. Like it's just we just
Literally.
never know. It's been such an up and down NFL season where there's no clear cut like favorite in the NFL, not just conference, the NFL. Because I mean, you have the Cardinals, you have the Packers. The Bucks have looked better as of late in the NFC.
Rams,
and the AFC is just a whole
and
mess.
down.
Yeah, who knows what happens with the Rams? The Rams play the Cardinals this week, so that would be a huge win for them.
I'm gonna.
I mean, what was that, Cody?
I was just gonna say, if you're not done, but I was just gonna say I'm gonna start something for our shows just to mix it up a little bit and just pick our upset of the week coming up and just pick a game that we think is going to go a different way than what people think. And I'm just going to go ahead and just say the Jags over the Titans this coming week.
The Jags usually always play the Titans pretty well for some reason.
Yeah, and the Titans just aren't
Like-
that good team in my opinion. But
Let me look up the schedule here real quick.
Yeah, I'll go off that. I'm gonna take the Jets to beat the Saints.
I knew you were gonna say that one.
I was gonna say.
I'm taking the Jets. I like the Jets this week.
Well, now I can't use that. So
no, I can't use that.
Sorry. Tom.
Let's go with. Is that too many upsets? Like
yeah, there's
hard
not too
ones?
many like upsets that can happen.
I think that I mean the Falcons are technically underdogs against the Panthers. I like the odds there. Don't think the Lions can beat the Broncos.
I mean, hey, the
The
Lions beat the
Texans
Vikings.
Hawks game's a little interesting, for being honest.
Yeah, Tyrod Taylor is benched, I believe. So
Davis Mills season, baby.
Yeah,
He's
Davis
back.
Mills back in charge.
I don't know. Washington, I guess, is interesting. Sorry, Tom, but they're hot. Like,
Would you
that's a
consider
fun one.
Cleveland over Baltimore?
I don't
That's,
know
I
at
guess,
this
an
point
upset.
who- I don't even know who you consider that.
I mean, I do think
I
I
don't
think
know
the
how
Browns
it's
are winning this week. I think the Browns are going to
Mhm.
beat the Ravens this week. They almost beat them in Baltimore like a week ago.
What about
Now
the
the Browns have
Jake
had 2
Fromm
weeks.
led Giants over the Chargers?
Oh God.
Here, I got mine. Even though I bashed them earlier, this is technically an upset. I think Bills win in Tampa Bay.
All right, I like that one.
I like it.
Save
I
their
like it,
season
and
essentially.
I
Yeah,
guess
it's
I'll give one
technically
too.
an
It's a little bit different. I think the Rams will beat the Cardinals.
I agree
I mean,
with
it's an
that.
upset.
agree with
It's a
that
little
one.
different, but it's an upset. I didn't like I said, Texans, Seahawks, a little interesting. Davis Mills, whatever. You took the Jags, Saints. I mean, the Jags, Jets. Falcons, Panthers isn't really enough to call it an upset. I don't think the Lions beat the Broncos. The Giants, Jake Fromm led Giants, aren't beating the Chargers. Like, Packers or the Bears aren't beating the Packers.
How dare
So,
you disrespect Jake Fromm?
Yeah, for real.
Hey,
Georgia
he's
Bulldogs.
getting his
like
opportunity.
legend.
That's all you can ask for in life, man. It's having your opportunity, really. So,
Yeah, I mean,
can't really complain there.
Keenan Allen may not play. He's on the COVID list, so he may not play in that game.
I don't think it matters. But
I mean, I don't.
he
really
might
see
not
them
play. You're
losing.
right, man. He might
I don't see
not
them losing
play.
either. But hey, that could play a factor in it. You never know.
That does matter.
So,
But yeah,
I mean, it matters, obviously, but like, I don't think.
just a little bit.
I mean, a 21-point win goes to a 14-point win. 10-point win. Like, it's whatever. But we'll be here next week to kind of break down. Maybe we all hit the upsets. Maybe go. Put your freaking bank account down on all these upsets that we just gave you. Probably a good idea. But anyway, I think that kind of wraps things up here for us this week. Like I said, we'll be here next week, same time, same place to break it all down for you. Just another reminder, follow along on here, subscribe here on the YouTube channel, follow along on the Twitter, the Instagram, and as always, subscribe to our TWSN Patreon. They will give you much better bets than we just suggested to you. But yeah, I think that's going to kind of wrap things up for us this week, and we're looking forward to seeing you guys next week. Peace.
Get up, let me begin. This is TWSN. You ain't heard about us yet, well, you better know now.